Hi. A few days ago, my mother, who was 97 years old, died. Um, it was not unexpected at her age, of course. She'd been living in a nursing home in Carson City, Nevada for um, the last few years of her life and was ever so slowly suffering with more and more dementia. For about the last decade, almost every time I spoke with her, she said, well, it's far better to go and be with the Lord than it is to live here. And she finally got her wish and died peacefully. And it lots of condolences have been flowing in. People telling me, what a wonderful Christian woman she was, and little stories of acts of kindness that she's done. And I appreciate all of those. On the other hand, I have some mixed feelings because, like all of us, and that's the key, like all of us, my mother was a mixed bag. There are people who see other people as either all good or all bad. That's a sign of a severe emotional deficiency. No one is all good other than Jesus. And no one is all bad other than the devil. When we're talking about every human being other than Jesus, we're talking about a mixture, some good and some bad. All of us are a work in progress, and my mother was no exception to that. And so one of the things that I struggle with is this idea that I hear pretty frequently in Protestant Christian circles, not so much from my Roman Catholic friends, but in Protestant circles, I hear this idea of the moment you die, you're instantly perfect. Just poof. You're instantly with the Lord. You're instantly perfect. And now it's eternal bliss. And I struggle with that for a number of reasons. I struggle with it biblically because the Apostle Paul seems to indicate that after we die, there is a separation that takes place, that there's a refining that takes place. Remember, the Apostle Paul said, underscoring the fact that none of us are all good or all bad, that we're all a mixture. He essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said there's parts of us that are analogous to silver, gold, and precious stones. There are other parts of us that are more analogous to wood, hay, and stubble. And he goes on to say, as they are passed through the fire, the wood, hay, and stubble are consumed, and the silver, gold, and precious stones are refined. The dross is burnt away. They come out of the fire better than when they went in. And I have always assumed that being in the fire was some kind of a horrible, sort of painful process. And I had always hoped that, well, maybe it takes place like instantaneously. In fact, I remember saying to people in sermons that the instant we look into the eyes of Jesus, which are like flames of fire in the book of Revelation, the instant we look into his eyes, all the silver, gold, and precious stones that is us becomes refined, and all the wood, hay, and stubble that is us is consumed and gone. And we, therefore, having looked at him, we are like him. And now we are perfect, and he can present us faultless before his presence with exceeding joy. Now, maybe that's the way it works. That's fine with me if it is. But recently, I've been discovering that it's not just about the destination. I'm grateful for the destination. To be absent from the body is to be home with the Lord. And the Apostle Paul said, I'm in a strait betwixt two things. I can't decide which is better, to depart and be with Christ. Well, that's far better, he said. Or to stay here and be with you because you guys probably need me. So I'm grateful for the destination. But I'm also grateful for the journey. It's not just about the destination. It's also about the journey now. Knowing Jesus today, walking with Jesus today, living in fellowship with Jesus today, allowing Jesus today to refine me and to make me a little more and more like him. And, if we're zapped into perfection the instant we die, then why bother going through all that right now? I was digging around, doing some research on the idea of purgatory, something which Protestants have tossed out. And I think the reason that Protestants tossed it out is because in the Middle Ages, specifically around the time of the Protestant Reformation, the idea of purgatory within the Roman Catholic Church had come to mean a place of horrible torture. And it was used at that time as a manipulative threat to raise money. So they sold these indulgences, and they would come to town, the priests would come to town, and they would present these images of horrible, terrible flames and suffering, and and they would say things like, you remember your sweet mother, remember your sweet sister, that child that you lost to the plague, that you love so much. Well, right now they're being tortured in these flames, but you can shorten their torture by donating some money, and we'll give you an indulgence. And that's the way they raised money to build St. Peter's Cathedral. And in the Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther and the others rebelled against that, and rightfully so. But I think maybe they threw the baby out with the bathwater, because at least in the research that I've been doing, it appears to me that the original idea of purgatory was not a place of great suffering. It was just a continuation of the journey, getting to know Jesus better and becoming more and more like him, slowly over time, God making all things new, process that has been going on in this life and continues on in the next life until we are perfectly holy and like Christ. And the fire that Paul refers to when he talks about, wood, hay, stubble, silver, gold, precious stones, saved so as by fire, I've always assumed that fire, that meant like fire, like it hurts you. But fire also cooks your food and it warms you. And I think when the Bible says our God is a consuming fire, I think it's talking about God's love. God's love burns so beautifully. And he loves us so intensely. And the more we experience that love, the more we become like Jesus. And that's my goal for today, and it's my goal for tomorrow. And I think perhaps, I'm not laying down any dogmatic thing here, but I think maybe perhaps it's a possibility that when we die, that beautiful journey continues. And maybe my mother is experiencing that now. Or maybe the others are right and, she was zapped into perfection instantly. Either way, it's a good thing. But I like the idea of joining God as God makes all things new. And I like the concept that the fire of God, with respect to those of us who are followers of Jesus, is a refining, loving, warming, welcoming kind of fire. It's the fire of God's love. The only way it burns you is if you reject it, if you run away from the love. So that's what I've been thinking about in the aftermath of my 97-year-old mother's death.